was going to either be dead or in prison or both. I got really good mentors in the industry, Michael Brady, Nick Wright. I've been blown up multiple times, I've been shot.
Lee, there's a phrase that your network is your net worth. Now, I've only known you a short time, but you're a ninja networker as far as I can see. You're a real people person. That's quite an achievement in an industry full of kind of tech heads and computer nerds and what have you. But is that your superpower, do you think?
I think for me, I'm able to engage with people at a level where I'm authentic. I don't bullshit. I kind of come across, I say what I think. And I think that authenticity, elevates towards people, levitates towards people, which creates relationships, and I really do believe in the relationships I have in the industry with, people that have become, friends as well as, industry colleagues. And that allows me to, really kind of get in tune with people.
How you do that is that you're such a nice guy. And before this turns into a bromance, you weren't always a nice guy. And I remember you telling me that in your sort of junior years, shall we say, at school and what have you, you were probably not a very nice guy at all. Just to get into things, tell me a little bit about your background and what you meant when you told me that.
I come from a council estate in Bristol. I had a single parent father who was quite violent. Ruled with an iron rod. So I picked up a lot of his traits early on. Going through school, primary school, secondary schools, I was violent, because that's all I knew. Violence was what I knew, and with that violence come respect, whether that was forced or not forced, respect of my abilities to be violent. I got expelled from school at a young age, 12, and then I started working, so I was always around a much older crowd. For that, for me, was I was able to, again, even at a young age, I was able to identify that I could utilise that skill of violence to get what I wanted.
And you utilised that well by joining the British Army. Did you find the Army, or did the Army find you?
So my family has a history of being in the military, and, it was going to go one of two ways. I was going to either be dead or in prison or both. And the Army was the only option. I was an academic. I don't come from good grades. As I mentioned, I got expelled from school at such a young age, and there was a choice in front of me, and I had two paths. And I'm grateful for the path that I chose, which was joining the military at 16.
And could it easily have gone the other way?
Yeah, very, very easily. And there was times that I signed up at 15 and a half, and there was times and I remember thinking, do I want to do this, or do I want to continue being who I am? And it was the guidance from others, that allowed me to kind of make a choice of joining the military. I was actually broken. And what I say is I was broken by the military and then rebuilt in the military way, which is controlled aggression. And that really is a key thing for me today is, I still can get angry and aggressive when is needed, whether that's in the boxing ring, or again, not the aggression, but the tenacity and the tenaciousness of, getting things done. That still sits in me today, and I thank the military for that.
And you didn't just join the military, you joined the parachute regiment, which, for those that don't know, involves a very, very rigorous entry requirement and a training course to get into it. Talk to me through the sort of highlights, or maybe it's the lowlights of that.
Yeah, so the parachute regiment is the only Army regiment that has its own selection before joining a battalion. So you basically complete your phase 1 training, and your phase 2 training specifically around parachute regiment. They have what they call P Company, which is a week-long arduous tests, very physical and mental. We have things like the Trinasium, 60 foot up in the air. You have to go across 2 poles and you have to touch your toes. And it's not about overcoming the fear, it's about being able to do that while being given instructions. And all of this is combined in a week. So each day there's 2 tests, 2 physical and mental tests, and they are arduous. Once you pass that, you then go to what they call dynamite mole, which is the final exercise. So it's basically a week of not sleeping, digging trenches and sitting in the trench cold and wet. And then, so the thing about P Company, it's not just the week, it's the 8 weeks before that they break you. You know, you're going out on 10 milers twice a week. You're doing a 2 miler every day. You know, you're having 3 meals a day, but you've got to get up and you've got to polish the ceilings. You know, get up at 6, polish the ceiling. Like, why are we polishing the ceiling? But again, this is how the army are kind of, and they're very good at it, you know, being able to mould you into what they need you to be. And the parachute regiment is the spearhead of the British Army. We're the first in, you know, and we're shock troops, and that's where I was very, very good with, as I mentioned, that controlled aggression now has been able to go to places like Iraq, you know, but also be able to change from shock troops to peacetime troops as well. So the British Parachute Regiment is very good at going in and, you know, being able to destroy what it needs to destroy, but then also help rebuild it. You know, and that's what my personal view of the British Army is we can do both roles, both peacetime and combat.
You said a lot of that with a smile on your face. Was it all plain sailing when you were in the military?
No, I've had lots of ups and downs, and, you know, it's all been a journey, and I look back on the journey and it has turned me into the person I am in today. You know, alcohol become a friend of mine. And with that alcohol come consequences, you know, and consequences have been a big part of my life, of my drinking. And yeah, you know, court martials, you know, and again, one of the reasons why I kind of left the army was, you know, I was going down a slippery slope of just consequences. And what I would do is when a consequence arrived, I would make a change. So I went into private military contracting.
And that's where the 10-year gap on your LinkedIn CV comes in. We've all got gaps, but that's quite a sizable one. Can you tell us any more about that, or is it all a little bit QT?
You know, when I left the army, I was part of the patrol platoon of One Power, which is now Special Forces Support Group. Went out and was hired to work for the US Department of Defense. The one thing that I would say from that experience in Iraq was that working in small groups, you know, instead of having a battalion of, you know, other soldiers, you're working in groups of 8, you know, a team of 8, and you're still coming under the same attacks. You know, you're getting, you know, I've been blown up multiple times, I've been shot. So all of those experiences, you know, have allowed me to again understand that today's pain is tomorrow's gain.
Yeah, definitely. That knocks turning up for the second day at ice with a hangover into a cocked hat, doesn't it? You know, just that sort of stuff. There can't many people who walk the conference floor these days in our industry and sort of have got that similar experience to draw upon. But you touched upon something there, which was far from ideal, which is alcoholism. And I know that PTSD has featured, those letters are featured in your kind of career path as well, or your experience in life. Was that something you got over on your own? Is it something that you got help for? How have you conquered those demons?
It was only until I was noticed it in me that I was able to really kind of acknowledge that there was a problem, and I got support from Dylan at Light and Wonder when I was at Light and Wonder, but then that was really kind of the catalyst for it. You know, there was a number of people at Light and Wonder at the time that kind of like really supported me through the whole process. So they actually got me some therapy and some support around that. Being a typical bloke, ex-squaddy, you know, I just kind of wanted to brush it all under the carpet. And it wasn't until someone really kind of put out their hand and helped me, and I was able to see a therapist, do some EMDR, you know, and that's really helped me. But the kind of, my medicine has always been, or was always alcohol. You know, whatever life's problems were, it was easy to forget. And I think we all spend a lot of time, you know, whether it's the highs and lows of life, you know, alcohol was always a crux of mine. So therapy by itself wasn't, you know, the only solution. I had to get into a 12-step program, you know, and work the steps and really kind of hone in of what my alcoholism, you know, was doing to me, but also then accepting that. I think the key thing for me was just acceptance that, you know, alcohol was not my friend, but I used it to become part of this. You know, if you look at the industry, alcohol plays a big part in a lot of the conferences and events. You know, and I could have never seen myself not drinking, and I just thought I was the funny thing is, I'd always see myself as the life and soul of the party. What I now know is people are like, "Oh my God, here's Lee. Here comes the drama," and that's okay. And I can accept that today because that's not who I am today. But I was always had this fear of not fitting in. So again, when we talked at the beginning of the conversation, we talked around, my network now and how I engage with people. I do it at an authentic level, and it's okay not to be okay. Right? That's important today. It's okay not to be okay. And I do talk to a lot of people. I've got really good mentors in the industry, Michael Brady, Nick Wright, people that I can turn to and ask for advice and just have a bit of a heart to heart, sometimes when things come on top.
Quite a lot of this industry is now about early mornings as well as late evenings. And I know fitness is a big part of your life, and it's probably, I'm putting words in your mouth here, but has changed your perception from alcohol to maybe fitness and the gym sessions that you're putting on at conferences and what have you, which I've benefited from and really enjoyed. And I know a lot of people have as well. But after the army, do you think, this is a bit trite, but is that your second salvation in a way? That's where you found yourself again in that sort of role?
I enjoy it, and do you know what I enjoy? And I just put this here. I spend so much of my life hurting people, being able to see people smile on people's faces, whether that's through fitness, whether that's through just support on a daily business, whether that's, and I now look at how I can help others rather than what I can get. So I really enjoy just seeing people sweat and really have a kind of good laugh. And fitness does that. Fitness brings people together in a very, very different dynamic to what, sitting around a table or a dinner can do. And the military shows you this teamwork and camaraderie comes in the most challenging of circumstances. So when you're all breathing out and you're all kind of hurting, but you do it together, that creates a whole new connection. And that's what I love about it.
How did you get your start in this industry? You've gone from Iraq and guarding convoys and what have you, and now you're in iGaming.
Yeah, so I made a bit of money when I was doing the Iraq and Afghanistan consulting private military, and I retrained in IT, and I actually thought I was going to be a developer sat behind a desk. How I ever thought my personality would fit that, I don't know, but I actually got an offer from an operator, Dafabet, out in Asia for a project manager's role. And I moved out to the Philippines, and I kind of never looked back since. And that. And again, it's funny how things in your life turn up when they were supposed to turn up. I met my wife. We've had now a beautiful boy, and this industry has given me that. My wife works in the industry now as well, and that's what I really do love about our industry is that it's like being in the military. It's so we're all interconnected in some shape or form. We have camaraderie, we have good days, we have bad days, but we all kind of sit together, and people generally do help each other.
This is a bit of a cliche question, but how was the adjustment from military life to civvy life? Did you find that easy or was it tough?
I thought I found it easy, and again, when you're in a moment or in a period of your life, you kind of at the time I thought it was, I was doing okay. And I wasn't. I couldn't see it. It was only when others could. And, I'm really, really grateful for this. Throughout my life, I've had, especially coming out of the military and the kind of security piece, having mentors and people around me that really just care, and going, actually, why don't you go this way? And really kind of guided me. Having the right people and, having those mentors and also organisations that support is been key for me. And it's something that I've carried on and, over my period within the industry, I've also helped veterans move into the industry or other industries. And again, just trying to pass on what was freely given to me.
Yeah. You mentioned Dylan Slaney earlier and mentors and obviously Light and Wonder. How did you join them and what was it like working for one of the big industry suppliers?
Yeah, it was. I moved to them from Sporting Group as their kind of head of delivery in Europe initially. And again, it was through industry connections. Nick Wright done an introduction to Dylan, and as always is. And moving into Light and Wonder was an eye opener for me because again, it's a very, very structured, large organisation, large enterprise in the industry. But it's all about the people. And wow, what a great bunch of people there was there. And they really, for me personally, where I am in my career, I am where I am today because of the people of like Dylan and people within Light and Wonder that kind of just put the olive branch out and said, hey, we're here to help. I've had individuals do that, but having an organisation that really stepped up when I needed it and changed the direction that I was going in, that is key.
Yeah, of course, definitely. For someone who has been through the military, for someone who's got a successful career, you're now consulting, I believe. And
Correct.
one of the interesting things that I've read when I was researching for this was a post that you put on LinkedIn before ICE, which you sounded quite vulnerable. You sounded quite sort of lacking in confidence and sort of worried about going to ICE as a consultant on your own and what have you. I found that slightly surprising for someone who's ebullient, who's confident, who's a real people person. But was that just because it was sort of a venture into the unknown, or have you got that kind of side to you as well?
Yeah, look, I'm a human being at the end of the day, and again, this whole journey that I've been on from my career and my life is that I was always hide that. I would always hide the fear and the vulnerability around how could I show that. And a lot of my confidence comes through the fact that I'm fearful of situations, but I'm a human being and that's okay. And you put me into the fray and I get into it, I'm like, hey, let's get going. But it's those steps that you as me or anyone has to take to put yourself forward for that. And I think that's where the confidence comes in and everything's going to be okay, and but again, showing vulnerability and, what, I am a human being. I'm not a machine. I'm not, and people it's quite funny. People say to me, Lee, you're so confident you're a machine. And it's like, I still burn out. I still have all the same problems. It's just, how do I react to those things? How do I become better tomorrow than I am today?
Are you a lifer now for the industry? Do you think, or what are your ambitions?
Yeah.
People talk about having an army commission for a certain amount of time. Are you in for a certain amount of time with this industry, or are you kind of in it for good?
I love it. I think for me, this industry has given me so much, and I give the industry a lot as well. Whether that's individual or at company level. That for me, I've worked in other kind of industries briefly. They're just not like this industry. The industry is huge, but we're one close knit unit. So I think of the industry, multiple companies, battalions. In those battalions, you can have your CSMs that all know each other, a company sergeant, and that's how I kind of look at it. And it puts a smile on my face even thinking about the way that I have grown. And I hope, in the coming years, my viewers, I'd love to be a COO at kind of a B2B business. That's kind of my overall career plan. But, and I know what happens today could be very, very different tomorrow. So,
and speaking of jobs, you mentioned giving a bit back to the industry and giving a lot back to the industry. One of the things you did was take some aid to Ukraine with, in fact, our great friends and sponsors at Betting Jobs in association with them. Talk to me about how that came about and what that was like. It was kind of merging your previous role and your existing one, I guess, with a bit of military and a bit of industry as well.
I could have easily put some money into a pot, but for me, it's about knowing and having been in conflicts and what war does to just normal day-to-day people. It's not nice. And with my experience, I spoke to a couple of ex-regiment lads, both from the Parachute Regiment and the SAS, like, hey, what can we do? So the idea was born, let's take a couple of vehicles, let's do some aid. And I didn't realise how much help there was going to be, but as you mentioned, Jenny from Betting Jobs, single-handedly filled a van and a half of just, aid for these people and, the financial contributions to make it all happen. And that goes back to what I say, how this industry is so close-knit. When it needs to happen, we all stand together and we make it happen. And that's such a great thing and for me, a beautiful thing as well.
There's a lot of criticism of this industry, but do you think it's a force for good?
Yeah, and look, and I think the progress I've seen in the industry over the last 10 years, we only get better, and we only do more, and I think at the core of what people are doing is yes, we're there as an entertainment function for individuals with whatever jurisdiction they're in, but we also give so much back. Whether that's charities, you look at what Beardy done for the Oliver Wish boxing, and how much money was generated through that to go and support really, really important charities. That's just that's the tip of the iceberg. Then there's the individual contributions from all the stuff we don't see. that people go and do, and everything that throughout each month you'll see a multitude of posts from people in the industry doing something for charity. And what a beautiful thing.
And look, for something so serious to something less serious, although in your case it might not be, but trainers are a big part of your life. Anyone watching this can see behind you, obviously, that you collect your trainers. How did you get into that, and what number are we at the moment? How many have you got?
Yeah, so again, a big part of it was not drinking and then finding something else to be addicted to. So trainers become the next thing, and it was actually my wife who started me. She got me a pair, and I was like, "Oh, they're beautiful," and I was like, "I don't want to wear them," And it was like being a kid again. And because I come again, a big part of it I do think is when I was a child, I didn't have my stuff. I'm at that stage in my life where I can afford it myself, and I've got quite a few pairs. I'm on a 76 now. Probably about 20% worn and the other 80% not. I keep saying to my wife, she keeps mending because I keep putting more shelves up around the house with trainers on them. And she's like, "What are we doing?" It's an investment for our little boy. That's how I see it. That's my excuse anyway.
Everyone's got to have one. That's yours. Do you have a favourite pair, or?
Yeah, my Ben and Jerry's, the ones behind me that you can see, the Ben and Jerry's Dunks, they are, they're my pride and joy, and also my most expensive, so they have to be my favourite.
Speaking of favourites, we always ask 3 quick questions at the end of our guests. If I was to put you on the spot even, who's your favourite musician or band?
AC/DC.
Very good, bit of rock. Can't beat that.
Yeah.
And if you were, unfortunately, your last meal on Earth, your last day on Earth, what would that meal be?
Beef Wellington.
And any advice for the next generation of iGaming execs?
Be grounded. Find who can support you and who you can support.
Well, you're certainly grounded, Lee, and as you've proven on this podcast, you've got a lot to give to this industry. You've already given a lot, but certainly lots to give, and I appreciate the time you've given us today.
Thank you.
Best of luck.